Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're talking about Titans Season 3, specifically Episode 9 of the season, the latest episode of Titans Season 3, where just like with Episode 5, where we kind of took a break from the main storyline and did that whole Red Hood flashback episode, this episode we take another break from our main storyline, just as it was like really ramping up their last episode with Scarecrow and Red Hood and all that stuff, and now we're finally getting back with Donna Troy and Raven, and also a little Bruce Wayne in here as well. So another great episode. Like, this whole season of Titans so far is just amazing. I've seen a lot of people saying online that this is like their favorite episode, like one of the best episodes of the series. I don't know if I'd go that far, but it's definitely a good episode. One of the better of the season. But there's still some problems that I have with it, of course. But anyways, guys, spoiler warning if you've not yet seen Titans Season 3, Episode 9, because we are breaking it down in depth. So let's go ahead and jump into this thing. The episode begins with Bruce Wayne off in some sort of castle, because of course he's left Gotham City, so we have no idea where he is. I mean, he's a rich guy, so it wouldn't surprise me if he had like 6 different mansions that he owned across the world or something like that. So he's just living in some other building somewhere in the world, and he's got his lawyer with him, and we see that he finalizes his will. And this is obviously a big thing, because usually if people do things with their will, that usually means that they are either just like they're getting up there in age. I mean, to be fair, this version of Bruce Wayne is definitely on the older side, or sometimes it's just like they plan on they know they're gonna die soon. And I was super confused when this was first happening. I was like, what is going on here? But then, of course, it was explained in the final scene of the episode with, of course, his suicide attempt. But we'll talk about that more towards the end of the video. But let's get to talk about Rachel, because Rachel makes her return, aka Raven. I'm not really sure which one to call her, because she's Raven in the comics, and she still technically is on the show, but everybody calls her Rachel, so I'll just call her Rachel. But anyway, she is still in Themyscira training with the Amazons, and I really like this because it really showed just like a new side to the Amazons, because everything we've been seeing from like the Wonder Woman movies and all that stuff, that's very different from the Amazons, how they originally used to be in the comics. And I feel like this version of the Amazons in Titans is definitely a more classic version of the Amazons, which I honestly really, really like, because they're all like not only all wearing like white angelic kind of also warrior outfits, but also like everything they say just sounds like so wise and like spiritual and everything. So I really like this version of the Amazons. But basically the big thing that's going on here with Rachel in this episode, because the whole reason she went to Themyscira was to try and learn and train so that she could then bring Donna back to life. And so throughout this episode, she just does a bunch of training and does some different exercises to try and see if she's going to be strong enough to be able to make this happen. But by the end of it, she realizes that she can't. She can't do it. She can't bring back Donna. She's dead. She's gone, and she's not coming back. Or at least that's what she thinks, because, as we see in the episode, she can, and she does. It's just not because of Rachel. But speaking of Donna, she is just chilling in the afterlife, because of course we first catch up with Tim Drake after last week's episode being shot in the back by Scarecrow, and I didn't think he'd actually die here. I thought he was gonna be fine, but no, he full on dies. Very similar to reminds me of Doom Patrol Season 3 with the new episodes that just premiered. Spoiler warning for that, and also if you haven't already, check out my review and breakdown for those first 3 episodes. But at the end of episode 2, all of the Doom Patrol were shot and killed, and then episode 3 was all about them being in the afterlife and then getting back to the land of the living, and that's basically what this episode was about for Tim Drake and Donna Troy, and also Hank as well. So I think that's honestly kind of cool, oh, what a coincidence that it just so happens that both of these episodes are dealing with the afterlife on the same day. But so that was really cool to see. And yeah, so Tim, he wakes up in the afterlife. He is actually dead, and he is on this train, and it's definitely a metaphorical train of they're on their way to basically the afterlife. And Very similar to that episode of Doom Patrol. Basically, if he's gonna make it out of there alive and make it back to the land of the living, he's gotta get off that train, because that's kind of like the being processed part of the process, where like it's like they're in between being dead and alive. So that's what he does. He just automatically gets off the train. Then we see actually that Donna Troy is on the train with him, so she ends up following him just because she's like, oh, he seems scared, so I'm gonna follow him. And this was one thing that kind of didn't make sense, because, you know, if you think about it, why is Donna still on the train? Like, she's been in the afterlife for probably at least a year at this point, and especially like how we see Hank later, how he's been off the train for a while now. Like, she was dead first, so I don't really know exactly how that worked. There's definitely a lot of plot holes with this whole afterlife thing in this episode, but I still really enjoyed seeing it here. So we get this nice little conversation between Donna and Tim, and, you know, throughout the whole episode, he keeps calling her Miss Troy, and then these like crazy shadow demons show up, and they're officially called the Ghouls, and they just attack Donna and Tim until they're rescued. They have their getaway vehicle showing up, so this car just pulls up and rescues them. Turns out it's Hank, so it makes complete sense that Hank is here. And when I first saw that they were doing this whole black and white afterlife thing, especially seeing the interaction between Tim Drake and Donna Troy, I had a feeling we'd see Hank as well, because I remember back before the season even started, I saw set photos that Connor Leslie, who plays Donna, and Jay Lycurgo, who play Tim Drake, they had posted set photos on social media of specifically those three together. So I was already confused at that point of like, all right, what kind of story is involving specifically Tim Drake, Donna Troy, and Hank? Well, then obviously after Hank died, it got even more confusing, but this makes so much sense here. So it's so cool to see Hank back for this one episode, because, you know, I think he had a pretty good send-off in episode 3 when he died, but I still enjoyed seeing him here, and he gets an even better send-off, I think, at least in my opinion. And I love how when he pulls up, he's it's playing Living on a Prayer is playing in the background. It's like, yeah, that just makes so much sense, and also it's just such a good song. So he, you know, goes on to tell Donna about how he died and all that stuff, and then he takes him back to his base of operations, and he informs this team that there is a bridge that supposedly can bring you back to life and bring you back to the land of the living. So basically that's Hank's goal. He was investigating that when he ran into Donna and Tim, and so now that's what they're going to try to do. But for some reason, Donna doesn't want to. She's like, I don't want to go back there. And this was another thing that was confusing. Like, why wouldn't she? Like, I mean, especially, and she brings up the fact that, like, I was killed at a carnival because I was electrocuted, which I think we can all agree was a stupid way to go out. But you'd think that that'd actually be more of a reason to want to come back to life, because, like, she had a stupid death. But Tim is able to convince her, so they go on with the plan, and then Hank does another crazy reveal with some cool afterlife logic, where apparently you can just, like, manifest things. Like, if you wish for something hard enough, like, things can happen. Like, when they're in the middle of a battle, he just really wishes that he had guns, and then all of a sudden, he's got guns, and he's able to save the day and everything. So, this was really cool to see. Again, another thing that kind of makes sense with the afterlife, and was used for a bit of comedic effect later on, especially when Tim was trying to start doing it. He like kept like thwipping his hands like, oh yeah, it's gonna happen, and then it didn't. So that was funny to see. But we see this final battle between Hank and Donna, and Tim battling the ghouls, and they're all manifesting weapons and all that stuff. But Hank decides that he's going to stay behind while Donna and Tim are able to escape, and they basically not only turn back into color, but they just fade away into the land of the living. And you see Tim actually wake up literally in the middle of his operation, so I assume that most likely the Titans got him to the hospital, and they're probably removing the bullet and all that stuff. So he just wakes up in the middle of the operation. So we know he's alive. He's all good. But Hank, then we get this ending for Hank, which again, I think is like a perfect send-off for this character, because as he's about to go through the bridge and get back to the real world, he turns around and sees Donnie, the original Dove, which was a character I honestly completely forgot about. But yeah, like in the first season, that was part of the origin, that like Donnie and Hank were like the original Hawk and Dove, and then when Donnie died, that was when Hank met Dawn, and then she went on to become the new Dove. So I really love that, because this was not at all something I was expecting here, but this is what makes Hank decide that he's going to stay in the afterlife. And they basically decide that, you know, these ghouls are murdering people left and right there, so they need to be the Hawk and Dove of the afterlife, which is so cool. And again, just like such a good send-off for that character, because Hank's one of my favorite characters, and obviously the last time he went out definitely with a bang, but this time he gets a nice ending. It's nice to know that he's still out there fighting crime and doing what's right, and, you know, standing up for the little people. So I'm excited for that. I think that's really cool. Probably never going to see him again, but then again, you never know, because I think they can still go through the bridge, so I suppose they could do that at some point, but at least for now, and most likely for the remainder of the series, he's going to be sticking around in the afterlife. So again, I think that's a great ending for the character. But the ending of this episode is really interesting, because we catch back up with Bruce Wayne again in his random private island mansion, where he's now banished himself to, and you see that he's like putting like fluid all over the house, and then he pulls out a lighter and he's ready to set the building on fire, and basically it's a suicide attempt here. And you can tell like he's just a broken, fractured man. This is one thing I do like, because, you know, I've never liked the idea of Batman killing, but I do like the fact that, you know, he did it here in Titans. And he killed the Joker, but you see that he is like, his mental state is completely affected by that, and I love seeing that here, because it's like such a huge impact. So that was really cool. But before anything bad is able to happen to him, Donna appears and saves him, which is another thing that's like doesn't make any sense, because we literally saw earlier on in this episode that her dead body was in Themyscira with Rachel, so I have no idea how she all of a sudden ended up at this new Wayne Manor, but I don't know, but it happened. So yeah, but that is where the episode ends. Again, another great episode of Titans Season 3, taking a break from the main storyline, so I'm excited to get back into that next week. But for now, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think about Titans Season 3, Episode 9? Let me know all your thoughts, theories, and predictions for the rest of the season. Just a few episodes left. I think 4 episodes. Yeah, 4 episodes. So it's going to be crazy. Super excited. But anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video, and hit the subscribe button so I can keep up to date on everything that goes on in the DC life.